Everybody's, there we go. Friday, March 13th, the second month in a row with a Friday the 13th. Anybody feel that pressure? I don't know. It's 2 months in a row. We are in-house transportation. We are trying to work through mileage-based user fee and some changes and some pieces. I would hand it over to, I guess, to Damien, to Ledge Council, and by Patrick. I want you to feel comfortable to interrupt at any time rather than waiting for the hand thing to come up and whatnot. When you have something to say, we just expect you to jump in, please. So, when you want to comment and add, I know that there's been changes. We're up to, what version are we on here? Like draft number 4, or is that?
I will let you know as soon as my computer unlocks.
And we won't vote on anything today, but I don't have a problem. I don't know about vote, but I don't have a problem making adjustments and recommendations. And I don't even have a problem having more escalator talk, because I think we need to. In fact, I don't even mind starting there, but because I think there's kind of like 3 or 4 options, and one of them is to, at one end would be to leave it the way it is, and one end is to take it out entirely. Another suggestion might be that put it in contingent when other things might happen. And I don't know if there's other options. That's the only 3 I can think of, but I think we're probably headed in, at least my read on the committee, is in the not ready for prime time, not ready for the full inclusion in our bill, but I could be wrong.
We're talking about the inflator.
And
This is the draft 4.1.
we're going to go through the draft once he pulls it up. I'm just sort of throwing conversation that my read of the room is that we would be likely to remove it, as opposed to trying to come up with a contingency that says when I do agree with the agency's testimony that inflator and inflation adjustments and whatnot are probably good public policy. I do agree with that, but I am very much aware of the other parts of that sort of not being addressed in other areas.
So it's taxing people in a fair way. That's good public policy.
So-
too.
Do you want-
That's what I'm trying to say. So I don't know. We're not going to vote on it. I want to make sure that somebody understands. Yes, I am looking for, am I reading the room that we are much more likely to take it out than do anything else?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it would make sense to put in some kind of intent language that there should be an inflator at a point at which we're rolling out the MBUF to all vehicles. I would support that. Since it's already in the intent language that there's intention to roll out the MBUF to all vehicles, so we could build off of that.
I'm not
later. Yeah,
I'm not, I don't like the part about the intent of all vehicles, but I do like the part about until other inflators are there or more vehicles are in that spot. You know, I'm gonna just haven't come around to the solution that we should be a mileage-based user for everybody. I think I made it, didn't like the intent language last year, and it's still intent, but I'm not saying I didn't used to losing. I've gotten used to that. I just, but I agree with the other portion of that.
I'd also support removing it entirely. I was just.
Oh, well, I meant that the intent that it should either be on gas vehicles or on all vehicles if they've moved into mileage-based user fee or something like that.
Right, but if, folks aren't comfortable with that, then we could just remove the inflator altogether and not try to suggest what future legislatures do when they come back to that discussion.
What?
Yeah, just to reiterate my position, which is I'd be supportive of keeping inflator language in there, provided that the gas tax gets the same inflator. We could also supportive of taking it out. And are we having conversations about whether the construction is the right thing to tie the inflator to? Because I think we recognize that like those costs have gone up extraordinarily in the past 5 years. So there were other inflators suggested that I think have not been quite as volatile.
So we did hear that, and that's also another parts of the reasons about whether we are really ready
I think the first answer to the first question is gonna answer the second question, answer the second question. When we just pull it, you don't need to know what.
The simplest path forward.
Yeah,
Okay, are we, I think unless, I already know, I think we've been pretty clear on this one.
Thank you. The discussion allowed me to recover from my computer crash.
Okay,
We now have a document.
I'm glad
So
that worked.
I appreciate that. So for the record, I'm Damien Leonard from the Office of Legislative Counsel. I'll pull up the latest draft for you here, which is draft 4.1 dated yesterday at 9:17 a.m. So to preface this, you'll see some edits in here in areas where we weren't working yesterday because I had a rare break yesterday afternoon, was able to print out a copy of this and go through word by word, line by line, and I found some technical issues. So those are going to be highlighted as well as correction in here as corrections. So as we work through the first changes, mileage reporting period, if you remember yesterday, I had attempted to shoehorn in a mileage reporting period definition for the pay-as-you-go program. That created a lot of confusion, so I've just taken it out and changed the way we explain the pay-as-you-go program. The next change here.
Sorry, I got either totally distracted or missed where,
Oh, sorry, that was on page 2, mileage reporting period definition. That's fine.
page 2, mileage reporting, the time
So
between annual inspections or the time period between the most recent annual inspection and a terminating event.
Yep, and I
That's
took
what it
out
says.
I took out language, so there used to be an or and then an explanation of the smaller periods that you might make payments on for the pay-as-you-go program. I just took that out because it was creating confusion yesterday. So
Has the agency seen this?
yes,
Patrick? Have you've had a chance to review these changes, or do you want to comment after or as we go?
Whatever is, whatever you think is best.
I just want to make sure that the agency has a chance to comment on any changes we made, that you were involved in making them, and where you stand on anything that's different or new. That's, I'm
Sure.
just, whichever the most efficient, so.
Sure. So I should say, for the record, Patrick Murphy, State Policy Director for the Agency of Transportation. Yeah, I'm happy to weigh in as we go, if that's the
Yes.
easiest way. So
Please.
Yeah.
You've seen this definition change and your comment is?
it is an improvement over the last draft, so I appreciate it.
The next change is on page 4. So this So this is into the mileage-based user fee in the pay-as-you-go option. So what this provides is at the conclusion of each mileage reporting period, which again is the annual period there, for a BEV enrolled in the pay-as-you-go mileage-based user fee program, the commissioner would determine if the actual miles traveled by the BEV during the reporting period were greater than or less than the miles reported by the owner during that period.
Thumbs up, Patrick? Not up? Yep, okay. It's a question, not a suggestion. We're good.
Great. All right. Yeah, and it occurred to me as I was going through the editing that we already said that you would just report the mileage shown on the odometer at the times and in a manner required by the commissioners. We didn't need that other mileage reporting period definition. So the next change, slightly lower on the page on line 15, I noticed that I'd left out the word "be," so that's added in. And then for the mileage-based user fee for newly registered vehicles, one of the things that came up was that in our discussion yesterday was that I'd left out the pay-as-you-go option for newly registered vehicles. So option one is the owner may elect to opt into the pay-as-you-go mileage-based user fee program, provided the commissioner has made that program available to owners or lessees of BEVs. So again, the commissioner can enable that program in their discretion. And then the owner or lessee of newly registered BEV who does not opt into the pay-as-you-go shall be assessed a registration fee based on an estimated mileage-based user fee equal to the rate established pursuant to subsection E multiplied by the average annual vehicle miles traveled. So this, we had discussed yesterday that right now that would be about $154. But this is how you estimate that fee is a policy choice.
Representative
How do we know the average annual vehicle miles traveled by pleasure cars?
Patrick, answer that.
Sure. So the UVM Transportation Research Center reviewed all the sort of, or much of the historical data on odometer readings through our vehicle safety inspection process. And they cleaned a lot of that data so that there's, you're eliminating outliers or potential mistakes within the data. And then it's, they've reached that through looking at there's a range of ways that more and less fuel efficient vehicles are used, but this is the average that they came to. It's just under 11,000 miles. It's about 10,850 or so. So
Will this number change over time? And where's the number written?
So it could change over time, depending on, whether people drove fewer miles or they drove more.
Who's gonna come up with this number? The average vehicle miles, the average annual vehicle miles traveled by pleasure cars.
That would have to be a review of the data from the prior year. It's not somebody coming up with a number, it's somebody reviewing the data to see what the number is based on how people are traveling.
I guess it's not even written down anywhere. I don't think, right?
So
Well, it would be inputted into our
Right, but I
system
mean,
for the
perhaps
mileage-based
it
user
should
fee.
say who puts that number in, how it's come up with, how often it's changed. I don't know.
So if you wanted that, there are a couple different ways to do that. Probably the easiest is to say, if I pull up the document here, at the end of the sentence here that says, multiplied by the average annual vehicle miles traveled by pleasure cars registered in Vermont, you can say comma, as determined by the commissioner or the department. And that would require them to determine that. You may then also want to add in a requirement that they update that number periodically. As I think Patrick alluded to, what's the current average may change as the economy changes and
Yeah, and I
changes.
realize we're gonna get our actual miles, but it does, it should be clear how that number comes up.
Yeah, you can also set a default in there. This gets down to a policy choice with the transition, which we'll get to later in the document. Instead of estimating the average annual vehicle miles traveled, there's a dollar amount in there. And there was discussion of different dollar amounts yesterday. The one that's in this draft, it just reflects the current infrastructure fee of $89, which is obviously less than the 154 at the proposed rate multiplied by 11,000.
Patrick? Did the agency track or the Department of Motor Vehicles track? Is this a number that was created and tracked for this program, or is this a data point that's part of something that's, meaning average annual vehicle miles? Is that something that's been tracked by the agency in other ways for other programs? Is it, or what, did you have to go out and get it for this program specifically?
Well, we came to this number through the specific work that UVM Transportation Research Center did in order to come up with what they felt was a fair rate. But we do have, you know, as a part of our work at the agency, we do consistently look to develop, you know, some approximation of what the average mileage is.
I know there's significant reports of vehicle miles driven annually. I've seen those, and but that's not exactly the same thing, I guess.
Well,
You guys
because
do track this. I'm just
yeah,
wondering.
so there's a lot of data that's tracked in order to understand, you know, traffic volumes on all of our state highway network, but that doesn't sort of tease apart which of those vehicles and miles traveled are due to out-of-state traffic and which is due to in-state traffic. So there is some additional work that's needed beyond, you know, all of that data to understand how vehicle miles traveled is changing, how those patterns are changing for Vermonters only.
I guess I would put a pin there to a certain degree, saying, do we need to look at more?
I think it just needs to say how we got there, or if we're gonna change it. And what the number is. Doesn't say that now.
So, I mean,
So-
sorry.
No, go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess one option is rather than to leave it open-ended and to change from year to year, you can just base it on what we know the data is now. Because, you know, regardless, it is an approximation, and it's a starting point for somebody to be able to figure out what they're going to pay on a monthly or quarterly basis, but there will always be the reconciliation at the point of registration. So, you know, shifts in travel patterns could you know, make it significantly higher in terms of mileage or lower in terms of mileage for a particular year. It's not likely, but even, you know, 1,000 more miles is still only going to mean a few more dollars per year. So I think the agency would be fine if you wanted to say not even, you know, $154, but if it's $150, something that more closely approximates what the average gas vehicle is paying right now, then you can just have it as a fixed number. And if it needs to be adjusted later, that's possible too. But it's not likely to change significantly what that starting point would be.
Represent what?
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. So just to clarify, so this number will be based on the data the agency is collecting on EV vehicles or all vehicles in terms of approximating annual miles traveled per vehicle in Vermont.
Sure. I mean, at the moment, it's just been based upon the entire fleet because that is, you know, what we were asked to do by the legislature is to base a rate off of the entire fleet in relation to how much the average gas vehicle is being paid.
I'm wondering if there should be a definition section for this estimated mileage-based user fee. With a little bit more detail on exactly what data points you're gonna use, whether it is all cars driving in Vermont or just EV cars driving in Vermont, but like what the basis is for it. And then you could just refer to that in this instead of having to spell it all out there.
In this case, I'd be a little bit concerned about creating another definition off of this. Since this is kind of an action we're directing them to do, you're assessing a registration based on, I guess.
And will it be based, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just like on that. So it will be based initially on however the AOT looks at all cars driving in Vermont, and what the average miles
The
traveled.
average annual miles traveled by pleasure cars registered in Vermont. So it's not trucks, farm vehicles, not antiques.
And then if someone is opting for that way of paying for several years, will their pay-as-you-go mileage always be based on that?
No,
Or
it's
just
the first year.
Okay.
So the way this works is you're assessed at the time of registration an estimated mileage-based user fee. You can then pay that as a lump sum or in installments, either quarterly or monthly throughout the year. At the conclusion of the year, when you actually have an actual mileage traveled, they true it up.
And that will be,
And that's-
it's based on for you personally.
Right, so at that point, you may receive a credit against what you're
Right.
gonna owe in the coming year.
Yep.
Or you may be assessed an additional amount because, so this is based on 11,000 miles right now. If you drove 16,000 miles, you'd get a bill at the end of the year for that 5,000 miles that you could then pay as a lump sum or in installments.
And this is taking effect, because we also talked yesterday about the registration fee would be that initial payment that would then be credited as the MBUF is starting to be rolled out. So is this
This is different.
specific to like a year later? So it's not like the initial rollout.
So this applies to, let's say, your January 5th of next year. You go out and you buy a new EV. You register that EV. For that EV, this is how they're going to assess the mileage-based user fee. You register it, you pay the estimated amount, and that's all baked into the registration of the vehicle when you get it. If you have a current EV, as you transition into this, we'll get to that section in a moment, but there is basically a setup in there where if you're going to have a full mileage reporting period before you renew the registration, the second half of your current infrastructure fee, because you would have had to do a 2-year infrastructure fee when you 2-year registration with 2 years of the mileage of the EV infrastructure fee. The second $89 of that infrastructure fee will be credited against the first year of your mileage-based user fee there. And then they'll adjust after that. So it kind of addresses the folks who are currently in the system. If you're not going to have a full mileage reporting period, then what'll happen is,
Yeah, that's clear.
yeah,
Thank you.
okay. But we'll get to that. It's several pages from now. But this is just for folks who get a new EV after January 1, 2027, and it's only for that first year. After that, you're in the standard program. And if and when pilot or pay-as-you-go rolls out, individuals will have the option to choose that instead, rather than having the upfront payment. Okay.
I guess as we move forward, we're gonna find out if I have a EV and I'm just re-registering the EV. You know, is my upfront payment gonna be based on that number that we're talking about for a new vehicle? Or based on what my mileage was for the previous year? We're gonna get to that.
So that we've already gone past that. So the annual mileage based user fee, the way it's set up in this is it's based off of inspections.
Yeah.
So there's a chance that your inspection coincides with your registration date. There is a chance that your inspection is at a very different time. You know, to use myself as an example, I have a car that I bought in November, but it sat on the dealer lot for 5 months and they had it inspected in June. So I have a June inspection and a November registration renewal. That car under this program, each June, I go in and get it inspected, gets an odometer reading, and then a mileage-based user fee would be assessed off of that odometer reading. And then if I,
Based on, you know, what.
based on what I traveled.
So you might get some back, you might get some ahead, because you're prepaying. And then you're gonna start a new payment period.
So the prepayment is for the newly registered vehicle.
Yeah.
And then, so take that example I gave again. So assuming that's an EV, I've paid an EV infrastructure fee. I get to, and let's say it's going to go, I've got a 2-year registration from November 26 to November of 28. But I have a June 27 to June 28 first mileage reporting period. I've paid a 2-year EV infrastructure fee. That June 27 to June 28 mileage reporting period, I have an $89 credit from the second year of that EV infrastructure fee, where when I get to the end of that period, it's applied against what I now owe the state because they've got my mileage, assuming I didn't opt into pay as you go. If I'd opted into pay as you go, that would have been applied with each installment where I took a photo of my odometer and sent it to the DMV until that $89 was gone, and then I would start paying. So assuming regular annual mileage-based user fee, I get to the end of that first mileage reporting period. Let's say I drove the average of 11,000 miles, so I've got a $154 bill. $89 gets subtracted from that. Now I have a $55 bill that I have to either pay in a lump sum or in quarterly or monthly installments. So I might be paying $4 and change a month if I do monthly installments, or I might be doing 4 installments of like 13 or 14 bucks. Or I could pay just the $55 all at once. So you have 3 options at that point. But that's how it'll work if you're already previously registered. When you newly register, that's the instance when you have an upfront payment so that you don't have a year of driving without any money going to the system. But that upfront payment, you can still choose to pay in installments, either by the month or by the quarter. So the $154 broken out by the month is, I can't remember right off the top of my head, but they're, you're under $20 a month at that point, or by the quarter, you're closer to $40. There you go, $12.83. And so there are options to allow people to budget it in if they don't want to do the upfront $154 on top of 163 for registration, et cetera. Does that make sense?
So, in this case, you got the inspection, it's halfway through between, right? It's halfway. You've gotten the inspection, you've trued up,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And then based on that inspection, you'll begin to make payments going toward your registration.
Well, so you pay your registration when you renew your registration.
Right.
So what happens with the registration, the tie of the registration to all this is, let's say I get the bill from the state for $55. I had a bill of 154. They subtracted the 89 that I paid the last time I registered. And then the next time, 5 months later, I haven't paid any of the $55 bill. When I go to register,
You have to pay it.
I have to pay it.
So now you've trued up at registration.
Yeah.
What will be the payments going to your next inspection?
So with the registration, you just have to be current. You can't
Right.
have past due amounts.
Right.
So I could be
Now
paying,
zeroed out.
I'm zeroed out, then I don't have payments until the end of that mileage reporting period. So the next June, let's say, or whenever my inspection is, I get another odometer reading and then another assessment from the state for the mileage-based user fee. And again, I can choose lump sum, monthly, or quarterly at that point. So if your inspection and registration go hand in hand, then you'll be seeing these payments at the same time. If they're offset, the tie is really just that if you haven't kept up with the payments that you owe, you need to catch up on those payments in order to renew your registration.
Right. I get that.
But otherwise,
Renew your registration, you've zeroed out.
right, and
You're caught up.
yeah, you can do
The
that.
payments.
You can do that at the end of your mileage reporting period. You can pay 100, whatever it is, right then, and then no payments until the end of your next mileage reporting period when you get a new bill. Or you can pay monthly or quarterly to budget it out. And I think the key thing here is the registration is a point for you to have to catch up, because otherwise it won't renew at that point. But otherwise it's tied to the mileage reporting period, because otherwise you'd have potentially up to an 11-month lag where people would finish an annual reporting period and then the state is not waiting till registration to send that bill. So the way this works here is 14, let me pull up the language for you. It might help to just look at it. So 14 days after the conclusion of the mileage reporting period, the commissioner has to calculate your fee. As soon as practicable after calculating it, the commissioner has to send that to you, whether that's by regular mail, email, or other digital notice. Within 45 days after that, you either have to pay the full amount or opt into the quarterly or monthly installment payments. And then you start making your payments at that point. And so that's how it works. That's mileage reporting period 1. You get to the next mileage reporting period, you do the same thing again. They look at your mileage traveled during that period. Within 14 days, there's an assessment. Then 45 days after that, you either have to pay the full amount or opt into a payment plan, and then you make your payments. The only tie to the registration for that program is if you are not keeping up with your payments. And then you just have to catch up at registration the way the language is now, which
So back to my original question, when you first register the car, nobody knows how much you drive. The estimate of how many miles the average person does gets applied.
mhm,
Then you get an inspection and you know your actual mileage at that point. The next time, and so let's go another full year. So you get another full year. Now I know how many miles I drive every year. And it's not the average, it's only half of the average.
Yep.
So then the payments will be half of the payments.
Right, you'll be assessed on what you're actually traveling.
Talking loud because Patrick's so far away.
Yeah. So it's
I just wanna
okay.
Make sure he hears. Okay, so
Yeah,
the average, the number will change based on how you report it.
right. So I think yesterday there was an example that was used in committee of the person who buys an EV, but it's their around town car. They go to get groceries. They don't drive more than 20 miles from home in the car. And so let's say that person does only 3,000 or 4,000 miles a year. They, with the upfront assessment, if that's over what they actually owe, that credit just carries forward to their next
Yeah.
for their next mileage reporting period. So they may have a $0 bill and possibly, say you're driving less than half, you could have a couple of $0 mileage based user fee bills, but they've just prepaid essentially. The flip side of that is if you're a person who, does a lot of travel in their car, you could be, you're putting a ton of miles on it every day and you're doing, say, twice that. You could get to the end of that first mileage based report or mileage reporting period and you paid, $154, but if you've done double, you'll owe another $154 at that point. And then your next mileage reporting period, you might get a bill at the end of that for $300. And then you have to figure out, do I want to pay that as a lump sum or budget it out?
So the estimate based on the mileage, we talked about how we get that number. That estimate applies to brand new cars.
Yep.
Then we have all these cars that are there. We got to sugar out the infrastructure fee. So that gets sugared out over the next year or two, depending on how you did it. But then at some point, all the cars are all registered, they're in the program, they've been in for several years. At that point, whenever you get an inspection and you come up with a mileage, you true up what had been applied as payments,
Mhm.
if there were payments along.
But if you
the
did
way,
pay as you
or
go,
You pay at the end and you pay it. And
Mhm.
then at that point, your payments will be based on, if you say, I want to pay monthly, those payments will be based on what your actual yearly mileage you have a record of, or does it go back to
it's the mileage in the last reporting period. So, again, take that person who just uses their EV around town. Let's say they switch jobs, so they get a longer commute and suddenly they're doing more mileage. Year one, they might have a very small bill. Year two, they could have a much larger bill because they traveled a lot more. It might be helpful to think of the way you pay this and that it's similar to income taxes. So pay as you go would be like paying your estimated income taxes on a quarterly basis. The assessment at the end of the mileage reporting period is like filing your tax return in April. And, at that point, if you owe a big bill, you can, the only difference here is you can choose to put that on a payment plan in a way that you may not have as much flexibility to do with your income taxes, although I think even there they might work with you. But in this case, it's the statute is setting out multiple options for people to elect to do based on what works for them.
And the only time an estimated comes into play at all is the very first time.
Very first time. So it's for a person whose
Okay.
vehicle has no miles on it yet under their ownership.
Representative Piquant?
So that very first time is an estimate, and then a year later, because you're taking down or whatever. So technically, an EV driver's assessment for the MBUT is based on what they drove the last year, which
Yeah.
they're paying in the current year, but it's
Right.
based on how they drove the last year. So each year, at the end of the year, they will true up based
Yes.
on what they drove during that year and pay based on last year's driving.
Right,
Okay.
yeah,
So I keep looking at Patrick because I'm looking for him to, so, I'm just seeing, I have to pay upfront one way or the other. I can't wait until my inspection and then pay that amount.
if you're buying a new vehicle or new to you anyway, if you're newly registering an electric vehicle, you do have to pay upfront.
Yeah, I get that. But I'm back at my registration. I true up. Right?
I mean, hopefully you've been making your payments.
Then
You don't need to.
it Doesn't matter. I could be over or under, but it's trued up. And I continue to make those payments, or I continue to accrue that amount of fee till my next inspection. Then at that point, it's so, but I don't, I could, is there an opportunity there to pay up based on the inspection?
Yeah, you're not going to pay your inspection mechanic or inspection
No, I know
station.
that. Yeah.
But yeah, so again, you get to your inspection. Hopefully you've made all of your payments that were due in the prior year, whether you paid as a lump sum or monthly amounts. Your
And
next
that's
is,
right. You do have to pay something upfront every time.
so,
Maybe I'm not getting it, but I'm just trying to
Yeah,
understand.
so the newly registered vehicles pay an amount in advance.
An estimated amount.
Right.
Yeah.
For EVs that are currently on the road, you've paid an infrastructure fee in advance. It will be credited against a mileage reporting period if you have a full reporting period before your next registration. For everyone else, when you get to that reporting period, what's going to happen is you don't have an upfront payment at the beginning, but you get a bill at the end. So for your next reporting, in your next reporting period, you'll be making payments for your last reporting period. You're not making an advance payment on that reporting period. So if you think about, this is your point here. This is the time in the prior reporting period. This is the time in the advance reporting period. When I get to here at my inspection, there's an assessment. I get a bill. I can choose to pay that in 3 different ways over this next reporting period, whether it's all at the beginning or staggered throughout, but I'm paying for what happened before that inspection. So I'm not paying in advance for what's going to happen now. And then I get to the next one, and then they're looking back and I'm making payments. The only time I pay for what's happening now is if I opt into pay as you go. In which case, let's say I get 2 months in, or however often the commissioner asks me to send in photos, and I send in a photo that says I drove 1,500 miles, so then I have to pay for 1,500 miles. And then, the next, at each increment, at that point, I can make payments. However, that program ends up getting set up, and that's left vague in this because we don't know the details of what the software will support, if it will support it. But generally, otherwise, what I'm doing is I'm paying for the prior year. Same as with income taxes. You're paying for the prior year's income, generally, unless you pay estimated taxes. And even then, you're just kind of estimating and you true up. With pay as you go is probably the closest thing to estimated taxes, because you may still have a true up at the end if it turns out that there was a erroneous reading or something like that, and your mileage is different.
If I register a new car,
Yeah,
I'm given an estimated assessment,
yeah, you pay that.
so I have to pay it up front.
Yes.
The miles I haven't driven. But after I own my car,
Yep.
I don't have to pay upfront for miles not driven. I can wait until it's reported by inspection, how many miles I've driven.
Right.
If I could
Thanks,
just,
Patrick.
yeah.
Okay,
Um,
give it a shot and we're moving on.
Yep. So if you have a new car that's being registered, you will have that estimated amount. But this language, as I understand it, would then allow you, and that it's at least the intent of the agency, you would be allowed to select what payment frequency you want to, how you want to spread out those payments. So yes, it could be an option that you pay all of that up front, but someone might elect to pay on a monthly basis, and that's similar to a pay-as-you-go system, except it's just an estimated amount of how much you might have traveled in on a monthly basis. And then the true up happens at the end of that reporting period. So there's never going to be a case with the mileage-based user fee where you're having to pay a huge lump sum at the start, because that's what we're trying to avoid. The only case is if you've already paid an EV infrastructure fee, but whether
That's
it's
a special, yeah, that's a special case. So
Sure,
I register my car. I'm given an estimate. Here's what we think, based on average miles. Here's what you will owe at the end of the year after you had inspection based on that number. But I can choose not to pay it at all until inspection comes.
right, because you might have a pay-as-you-go option at that point where
Or
you
not.
just,
I have a no pay as I go. I'll pay it at the inspection. Can I do that?
I mean, you would have to select one option in the language as it is now. You'd have to select one option. Either you pay the full amount, you pay it on a monthly basis, or you pay it on a quarterly basis. If we are able to provide the pay-as-you-go option, then you could also select that.
So I'm paying
the-
it up front on a new car. Now I have a car that I've had for years.
Well, but
And I get to the inspection and I've hit it dead nuts. It's like exact amount. Do I then have to pay the next year's? Is that the next bill that will come if I'm paying once a year?
You're getting billed for what you traveled in the past year.
But I hit it dead nuts. I don't know anything. I'm right there.
Okay, so this is your newly registered car.
No, 2 years old now.
he's a couple years into it now.
Yeah, I'm
So-
just wondering, I mean.
So
when
then
I get
it's
a new
going to-
car, I pay ahead.
You're doing the pay-as-you-go and you're dead on
Or
at
I,
an
or I can choose
inspection.
not to pay anything and pay at the end.
Yeah, so you're gonna get, if you're choosing to, yeah, you're gonna get a bill.
And then I'm gonna start a new cycle. I can choose not to pay anything until the end again,
Yeah.
when I get my miles.
Mm-hmm. And you can also choose when you get that bill to say, I'd like to pay this out over 12 months.
But we don't have that option yet. We're hoping to have that
No,
option.
no, that's in here.
No, I know, but the
No.
DMV.
So
oh, they're
there's
paying
already
us?
an
No.
option to, no, not pay as you go. There's already an option to take the bill that you got and say, I'd like to pay this out in monthly installments, which allows, instead of dealing with a, significant bill on top of inspection and everything else, for folks to break it down to like a $12 a month payment, something like that, so that it can address the issue of the sticker shock, because it's designed to bring it closer to what you'd experience with gas tax, where you might be paying a couple bucks here, a couple bucks there in gas taxes that are built into the price you pay at the pump. The monthly allows you to do that, or quarterly, et cetera. So it brings it down to a smaller amount, closer to like a subscription to Netflix, or, quarterly payments are like, $40.
We're going to ask Logan or the agency to come up with here's the money I paid, here's the money I paid, a little illustration of how I would walk through the multiple examples. And that'll be helpful for, as we explained it on the floor as well. And you can put 2 or 3 illustrative examples of here's when you will actually have to pay the money out and here's what it's based on. Because the language will be, our goal here is to provide a framework for the department to then implement, and we're not going to be able to, come as the testimony from the other day, we're not gonna be able to fix every item, but I think what your point is, you should be able to demonstrate to the average person under a couple of scenarios when their money is gonna have to come out of their hands.
And maybe it's just me, maybe everybody else is getting it, but I'm not quite sure you're paying. I can choose to either pay it up front or not pay anything and pay it when it's due.
No, so I want to clarify on that point.
Okay,
There's not going to be like either you pay it or not pay it. It's going to be either you pay it now all up front or you pay it on a monthly or quarterly basis. That's what the language says right now.
okay.
Now, somebody
So-
could make the decision to say, even though I've been enrolled in this program and I've been issued invoices on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, I'm just not going to pay those. And I'll wait until the end of the year to pay everything. There's not anything in here that says, well, if you miss, February, March, and April, that you're getting hit with a late payment
Right.
fee. So the only time at which everything becomes due, where there's fees involved and beyond what you're actually owing, is at the point of registration.
You got it, you gotta
So-
come to, yeah,
Yeah. So somebody could say, all right, DMV is saying I owe $154 for the next year because that's just the estimate, because there's no historical data within the system to support anything else. They could say, I'm going to pay 154 right now. They could say, I'm going to pay 12, whatever it is, on a monthly basis. And, when you get that first bit of data into the system, then I think, as your earlier questions were getting at, that will be more finely attuned to what you've actually traveled.
all right, so the
That
first time.
that
is-
estimate that you begin your
First
next
time
reporting
is the
period with.
estimate, the next go around will be based on what your actual mileage is as proven to be,
That's right.
okay? And I can pay
And
up front.
so,
I can
in
pay
terms-
by the month, or I cannot pay at all, but I'm not getting my car registered until I pay.
And you'll owe interest.
I'll owe interest at registration,
Um,
or if I don't pay that at registration.
If you owe interest on past due amounts, it accrues at 1.5% per month. So that's also in here. So your bill will go up if you don't pay. So it's not a free ride until you decide to register your car, at which point,
Alright, that's getting
Yeah.
clear, but.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee when the program's, there is a guarantee now that when the program starts, that I'll have options to pay.
yes, that's always been a part of the program design, because otherwise, we would just be sort of recreating an unfair system of everybody has to pay a sort of flat fee.
Yeah,
What we want to be able to do is have somebody have the option of paying at a higher frequency, so it's not as much upfront out of people's wallets.
so my last question, I guarantee. But there was some concern that you're not sure that the DMV can get that part rolling?
as you
No,
go.
that
Oh,
that
just-
is, yeah, that is distinct from a pay-as-you-go option where somebody is self-reporting using, the
Got it.
photo capture and that kind of thing.
Yeah, okay, but the monthly payments will be part of the system, monthly or quarterly, however, if you decide.
Right, and so the photo capture and being able to self-report is trying to basically get at your concern, I think, which is that that initial estimate of somebody's mileage is, you know, too far out of line with what somebody might actually be traveling. So if we are able to implement that, then that concern goes away, because you can, instead of having something based upon an average vehicle going the average number of miles, it'll be more on a pay-as-you-go basis, what somebody is actually traveling. That's why we're working to see whether we can develop that as yet another option on top of the spreading out of payments based on an estimated amount.
Okay.
Thank you.
I told you we would take you past 3 o'clock. We're gonna have to look at, you'll get an update. We may come before 4 on Tuesday morning. We may have to pick up here in the morning, depending on who's available. I'll coordinate that schedules and I'll send you texts over before Tuesday. So thank you very much, Damien and Patrick and Logan. Thanks for your flexibility and keep moving us around all week, and we will see where we can pick up. We'll have a couple of long days on Tuesday and Wednesday. Thank you very much.